closing argument, it was opined, what is the protocol for someone who's involved in a horrible collision and has an airbag knocked in their face with broken bones? I would pose to this court, what is the protocol for how you act when someone kills your mother or your grandmother or your daughter? I would just posit to this court, some people respond with strength and they respond with grace. And that's what you saw here. Some other people respond another way. Your Honor, as you may know, we are in the position of criminal prosecutors of talking to people a lot who've suffered the tragic loss of loved ones. And sometimes it is an accident. We handle misdemeanor death by motor vehicle cases where it is an accident. And we have the difficult conversation where we explain the loss of your loved one is no less tragic than if it was a first-degree murder. It doesn't make, in a sense, it doesn't change any what you've lost. But we have to explain to them the law looks at it differently because the wrongdoing was a simple lack of attention or some low-level carelessness in violation of the law. I'm sure the court can understand that it is a lot more difficult to have that conversation when family members find out that the loss of their loved one was no accident. It is the result of multiple willful decisions made by someone that resulted in their death. I remember having one conversation, and I'll commend to this court the poise and the behavior you've seen from these folks in the courtroom. I witnessed first time I met them over a year ago. They have never reacted with anger, although it'd be understandable, revenge, although it'd be understandable. They have acted with nothing but the grace and poise you saw here today and what you've seen throughout the conduct of this trial. I'll share one. At some point we have the conversation where we ask, what do you think should happen? I'll share the one response I heard from a family member, and this was when it was still relatively new. And with the same type of calm, straight talk, this family member says, I don't really believe in the death penalty, but I don't think it would be wrong for the person to spend the rest of their life in prison who killed my loved one. They didn't say it through anger. They didn't say it through bitterness. They said that was a calm assessment of what deserves to happen to the person who killed their loved one. Now, you can't do that. You couldn't do that even if the jury convicted him of everything. But I would like the court to keep that in mind when it's fashioning a judgment. Now, a difficulty I have, Your Honor, which is why I asked before we began argument or sentencing, was that we have seen what happens when the defendant is allowed to make assertions that go unchecked and unresponded to. I have some idea of what they will argue in their presentation of evidence because they've been kind enough to present this sentencing memo. But I would like the court, I guess I'd like the court to be able to tell me yes or no whether or not I can respond to their presentation of evidence or not, because if not, then I'll have to do kind of like what I did in my closing, is guess at what they're going to say and try to respond to it.
I want to hear what you want to say now.
Okay. Then I will. Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate the defendant providing this sentencing report prior to now so that I could have a chance to respond to it. And I appreciate that I'm sure some work went into it, and I mean no disrespect to the folks who prepared it. But I ask you to lend nearly no weight to this sentencing report. And I'm not saying this well, I am an advocate, but I'm going to give you reasons why. This report carries no value in your decision-making on sentencing in this case. First off, first reason I state this is that it's clear that the drafter of this report is drafting it from the position of an advocate themselves. This is not an unbiased, nonpartisan evaluation of Mr. Kania or this case. Read the language used. It's obvious this is written as an advocate. You might say, well, of course, it's who he employed to write a sentencing memo to help him get a better sentence from the court. But there's not even a veil of this being some kind of clinical evaluation of Mr. Kania. The closing sentence of the opening section, page 2. This is his new purpose. To steal a quote from Brian Stevenson's Just Mercy, he just wants to be more than the worst thing he has ever done. This is someone who's advocating to this court through this sentencing memo. Furthermore, conclusory statements like, for the majority of his life, he has actually behaved as we should be able to expect young people with his advantages to behave. I will talk, if the court will allow, I will talk why there's nothing reliable to base that assertion on. It also says that he is a truly promising and decent young man who fell prey to the lure of going to bars, drinking on a fake ID, and using marijuana. Your Honor, he did not fall prey to others. And I'm going to state my general position as to why the person who wrote this does not know Chandler Kania. Frankly, Your Honor, I'd commend to this court, I know Chandler Kania better than the person who wrote this. Maybe not better than his family members, I won't contend that. And the reason is because they talk about what they use to review in order to consider in sentencing. They say that they read the discovery. Now, in the discovery is the download of his cell phone, and I am not going to pretend that someone's cell phone is a perfect encapsulation of their life. However, for a person of his age category, particularly if this court were to review the download, which I'm not expecting the court to do, I'm not sure I'm not the only one who actually has. I actually received some playful ribbing around my office that I spent better part of 2 weeks actually reviewing what was in that cell phone. And contrary to the assertions of counsel, there's a lot more bad stuff we found in there than what we presented in court. But as your Honor is aware, there are decisions we have to make based upon what we present, what is admissible, what we should present, not over-emphasizing things. And there's a lot of stuff in here I wouldn't bring up, but for the assertions made in this report, which are clearly refuted by what's in this download. If they were to actually, meaning counsel for the defendant or whoever wrote this sentencing memo, were to actually have read this, there's no way that they would assert that Mr. Kania was the prey of the culture. If they read this, what they'd find is, if you were to match up the number of times he's the one saying, let's go out and get weird, he's the one saying, I'm out, what's your problem? He's the one having extended conversations with other students who are saying, no, I have a test tomorrow, I can't, oh, come on. He's the one who's luring other people into this. He's not the prey, he's the predator. There's no chance that anybody who asserted that he's the prey looked over this. Furthermore, this would have never come in but for a blind, nakedly inaccurate assertion in this sentencing memo. Page 6, substance abuse and mental health history. I have not discovered evidence of substance abuse in Mr. Kania's family origin. His parents do not drink. That is a demonstrably untrue statement. His parents are not on trial or on for sentencing, but that is illustrative of the fact that whoever did this clearly based it on, they talked to the defendant, they talked to his parents, and they wrote a report. May 1st, 2015, while parents are off to a vacation, the defendant says to his mother, "Drink as much as you assume I drink. No one can judge you for drinking wine. It's classy." Response from mother, "Ha ha, will do." And I want to say at the outset, I recognize there was one case in which I tried to get before the jury what I thought was an inference could be drawn of a past incident of driving while impaired or after drinking. I would contend there is no reasonable inference to draw for something like that, other than it at least refutes this blanket statement of the parents do not drink. May 11th, 2015, defendant, "Also, while you're thinking about housewarming gifts, wine is always acceptable, wink face." Response from mother, "Ha ha." Defendant, "We can all go to True, which is a bar, if y'all like. It's Cam's favorite place." Cam is his brother. May 25th, 2015, defendant's mother texts a picture of a bottle of Kendall Jackson saying, "Off to Thomas's to eat leftover wedding food with the Whites." He responds, "Snazzy, ship some to me." Her response, "Sorry, no can do, you're on medication, no drinking." "Oh, right," he responds back. I would ask the court, I have many, many more examples, but I'd ask the court, we're not going to focus on his parents, but what I'm saying is that's emblematic of the fact that this report is clearly not do what it claims to have done, which is actually done a true, I think they even use the word forensic in here somewhere, as if it were some kind of scientifically reliable way to evaluate this defendant in this case. It's far from. I'll note, Your Honor, that the sentencing memo actually includes settlement letters from the civil lawyers about payments made to these families, including amounts. I wouldn't fault them for pointing out that there's been a settlement made. It's hard for me to come to a conclusion as to describe putting the settlement letters in the sentencing memo with amounts other than tacky. To include the amounts as if they've gotten all this money. Go easy on them in criminal court. Specific conclusion reached on page 7. He notes his drinking increased to 5 or 6 times per month, mainly at the fraternity house. I'm not going to go day by day. If they had decided, as they purported, to put on a witness to attest to that fact in the form of an expert witness, by the way, that they came before this court and said a previous court, and say we have to continue this case because we have this essential expert we have to have. Not only was he not called, obviously, he's not even mentioned in this report. But I will say that having evaluated the months that lead up to the date of this offense, there is clear evidence in his mobile phone that he consumed alcohol and or marijuana easily 9 out of 10 days leading up to it. I want to make clear, why does that not come in at trial? Because the court may deem that not to be admissible or relevant, but when they make the assertion through their sentencing memo about his alcohol use that's clearly refuted by the evidence they say they reviewed when they wrote it, I say it casts doubt on the efficacy of the entire memo. He stated during the summer of 2015 he was using marijuana a couple times per week, demonstrably shown to be untrue by someone who actually reviewed this cell phone download. It was easy. I mean, we had witnesses, his own friends, who said it was basically every day. Attached to this is also the evaluation of Dr. Colvin. And again, with respect to Dr. Colvin, I believe he's the one, Dr. Corvin. He's the one who says he performed a forensic psychiatric evaluation. It appears to me that the version of forensic psychiatric evaluation is, for one, which is understandable. Informing the defendant, what you tell me, I'm going to say to the court later. They have to do that. But how much weight is to be put on conclusions made from the self-report of a self-interested defendant who says what his behaviors were? But he didn't even review other things that he could have checked those things with that were available, readily available to do it. Described as having an unusually clean evaluation, a conclusion not supported by what was available to him. Your Honor, the statement here is that he acted on his pro-social values and did not squander the opportunities that he has been given. Your Honor, again, just for time, I'll say, having actually reviewed what was in his phone, which is a very clear roadmap of his behaviors, there is plenty of evidence that he was not availing himself fully of the opportunities that were provided to him. Another statement here that I believe they're trying to paint the picture of this being a young man who was sheltered and therefore as a young adolescent and therefore not ready for, well, I'll read from what it says, left him less prepared to deal with less healthy influences that he would face once he was on his own at college. He was the less healthy influence on others, not the other way around. Again, in this report, Dr. Corvin, not in quotes, as a statement, he was still a 20-year-old kid at the time of the offense. And then here, and this is clearly coming from the defendant, referring to people of his age, he stated, nothing like this could ever happen to me. This is not something that happened to him. These are things he did. Something happened to their family. But it's illustrative, isn't it? That he makes a point of seeing this as something that happened to him. Further evidence that he has not taken responsibility for what he did. He could have said, I never thought I would do something like this. There's nothing in here about that. Conclusory statement from from a letter cited about saying it is easy and desirable to believe he is a bad person, but it is not true. We have not contended that he is a bad person. However, it is your responsibility, Your Honor, to hold him accountable for what he did. If I may have just one moment, I'm nearing the conclusion of my argument, Your Honor. It's clear this report, we would contend, is the result of taking the self-serving statements of the defendant and his parents and putting the best light on the defendant and his actions. I'm not saying I blame his parents for being supportive of him or him for being supportive of him, but how much weight can be given to a regurgitation of what the defendant and his parents say about him? And I'm not sure his parents really knew the person he was in college. Example, May 16, 2015. Father asked him, how's the tourney? Referring by context to a golf tournament he expected his son to attend. He responds, I decided to stay in Chapel Hill and study for my midterm Thursday, and no one else wanted to go with me. Father, sorry to hear that, but it was probably a wise choice to study. Father, you are so responsible. 8 hours later, after midnight, the defendant asks, where'd you go? Asks Ditz Shah. Ditz answers, bar. He responds, is there a cover? He says, $3. The defendant says, he's not his $3. Come to my car. Later that night, to 3 of his friends, I am too high, and Ditz keeps talking. That's what he stayed in town to do. Your Honor heard this thread in trial. I left out the beginning of it. It's a text from the defendant on May 18th. Hey, to his father. Hey, so due to my increased workload in my Maymester course, I think I'm going to drop my poly class. It won't count towards my major. I don't think it'll boost my GPA. Father responds, whatever you think is best. 4 minutes later, to his smoking friend, celebratory Chan dropped a class sesh tonight. I would commend to this court, I've been able to decipher what that is from context in the Urban Dictionary. What he's saying is, I just dropped a class, ready to get high, everybody? They talk about the fact that they can't do it in the house, and you've heard this, Your Honor. That's when he said, I'll drive. I love driving high. Someone says, let's go on a blunt ride. He is so responsible. There's discussion with more than one friend joking about how he's the Larez guy. Evidencing what is obvious if you've read this is that he's the guy who's always at the bars, not the victim of others' enticement. In fact, multiple text messages indicate he was the one who was out getting other people to try to come with him. And Your Honor, I recognize I couldn't get this to the jury, but there's plenty of clear evidence that the reason that we asked about cookout wasn't made up out of thin air. It's because text messages indicate that's what he did. He went to bars, and then if he couldn't get a ride, sometimes he did, but if he couldn't, he drove drunk to cookout to get food. Interaction with Sophia Barber on May 28th of 2015. Well, I'll be up super late, so if you want a drunk cookout run, hit me up. I could go on, and I won't belabor it too much, Your Honor, but I bring these things up not to hammer him for being a college student drinking, but to point out if they're going to make these assertions, again, I'm in the position of assuming what they're going to assume, but given that they proffered to the court this sentencing memo, I believe they're going to try to claim that it should be given some evidentiary value. I would say that it shouldn't. And he is certainly not the kind of person that was the victim of others. The defendant elicited evidence of character through our witnesses, describing him as a peaceful person. July 5th of 2015, between the defendant and a friend named Meg. Defendant, I'm just kind of reckless at times. Response from friend, yeah, that was a great first impression. The first thing I thought was, wow, he is so reckless. Response, defendant, LOL, I hope that's not bad. Response, friend. However, that night we stayed at Sig Up until 5 a.m. You said you were going to fight that guy who spilled his drink off the balcony onto my head. That's not a lie. Response from defendant, fighting is fun. July 11th, 2015, just another reference where he specifically offers to his friends, Mason and others, I'll just smoke and drive. That was 2 weeks before this happened. Multiple references to him being the one that initiates consumption of impairing substances. Multiple references to him being the one who likes to drive impaired. Loves to drive impaired. Now, the court has to make a hard decision now, and I suspect this is the last time I'm going to be allowed to be heard on this. And then the defendant is going to put on his evidence, and I suspect rightfully and understandably so, they're going to put on several people who say good things about the defendant. We are not asking you to condemn him as a bad person. I didn't bring up these past, what could be seen as bad acts, to say punish him because he drank and smoked a lot. I hope the court understands the purpose why I brought those up. I'm asking the court to render a just punishment for what he did that night. Now, there is a reference to a specialist, an impressive man, who himself lost a loved one in an impaired driving collision. And he opines in his letter that he doesn't believe that anything will be helped by this kid going to prison for several years. I suppose in some sense I can't disagree with that in terms of something that will be helped. However, part of this court's duty is to render a just punishment for what the defendant did. It's not necessarily about recidivism. It's about he did terrible, terrible things that night. At least reckless. The jury did come back guilty on reckless driving. At least reckless. We contend more, but we abide by the jury's conclusion. At least reckless. Multiple reckless things that resulted in the deaths of 3 people. And I don't know for sure, because I haven't heard them yet, but they may commend to this court that it would be more valuable. Let's bring something good out of this. You may hear that. So let's have him do some prison time, and then let's have him join this, again, admirable man in his quest to make videos and make him a spokesperson for the dangers of impaired driving. Your Honor, that's why we showed the jury the video he elected to make about texting and driving. Before someone can be a valid spokesperson, they have to have some credibility. Your Honor, I respectfully submit he has none. He has chosen previously to hold himself out as a spokesperson for the dangers of dangerous driving. And there's ample evidence that he ignored that, participated in it, and joked about it. How could he possibly be a good candidate to be a spokesperson about the dangers of bad driving? I suppose he'll opine about how he never thought something like this could happen to him. No, Your Honor, I contend that your job today is to render a just punishment for the crimes he committed that day. And as the court's aware, and I have a sentencing worksheet, probably can infer it, he is a level 1, 3 Class D felonies and a Class F felony. I'm not sure that I can contend that if the court finds different, I'm not saying you can't. I'm not sure as far as the misdemeanors underlying it that you can do much with them. The ones that could involve active time are essentially encompassed in the felonies that he's already been convicted of. And though the jury was not persuaded that he overcame the resistance of others to commit the offense, although our position is this offense, just say parenthetically, Your Honor, this offense started when he started drinking. He was certainly still in the commission of this offense when he pulled off from the parking lot. And that trying to make an argument that the offense only occurs at the millisecond of impact on I-5 is not supported by law, period. And any lawyer of experience knows that. But we cannot contend, because the jury has not found that an aggravating factor existed in this case, and so we are in a position where the most, unfortunately, that we can ask for in this court is a presumptive sentence on the felonies for which he's been convicted. And I believe this is the first time you and I've ever appeared before this court, but I would commend to this court in 10 years of being a prosecutor, I can count on at most 2 hands, I think 1 hand, the number of times I've actually stood before a court and said the maximum is the only appropriate punishment. I would contend, given all the factors, if there's not a case, what is? So, Your Honor, I would ask that he be sentenced to a minimum active sentence of 64 months for each of the charges of felony death, each of the convictions of felony death by motor vehicle. That he be sentenced to a minimum of 16 months active imprisonment for the felony or serious injury by motor vehicle. And I don't know for sure, but it's possible that the defendant will ask for you to consolidate or to run concurrent some of these sentences. This is not that kind of case, Your Honor, we contend. And the reason it's not is I think it's possible the defendant may argue that this was one act. It shouldn't make a difference that there were 3 or 4 people in the car. It was one act. Your Honor, it wasn't one act. It was multiple acts. And that's what I was getting at when I argued to the jury we'd be in a different place if this had happened when he first pulled out of the parking lot. Then you might say, well, he hadn't quite done as much. This is fighting people off, knocking hands away, pulling away with a friend in the doorway, coming out, going back, coming out again, going through at least 13 stoplights on his way out to I-85. At some point, getting on I-85. At some point, however he did it, turning his car around and driving his car at an excessive speed at oncoming traffic. With people swerving out of the way. This was well more than one act. And Your Honor, you know, I think that sometimes we have to recognize the difference between when we see things as lawyers and the way regular people see. If the court decides to consolidate or run concurrent any of these sentences, it is, I would contend, it is saying that there is no punishment for one of these people. Whose killing does he not get punished for? Is it Janice Beard's? Is it Darlene McGee's? Is it Felicia Harris King's? Because we can say it's running concurrent and it's two separate sentences, but it's not to the people that we're all responsive to, meaning the people of this state, this country by extension. So, Your Honor, running these sentences anything other than consecutive, we would contend is not justiciable, it's not fair, it's not appropriate. So we would ask for 3 consecutive, minimum 64, maximum 89-month sentences to run consecutive with each other, and a 16 to 29-month sentence for the F felony, a felony serious injury, to run consecutive to those. Last thing I'll say, Your Honor, is while you are listening to many folks who are going to say many great things about the defendant, I'll just emphasize this court that we are not asking you to adjudge him as being an always terrible person. But what he did that night was terrible. Justice demands that he be punished for what he did. We do ask for that sentence, and I thank the court for its time.
Thank you, then.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Thank you very much. Your Honor, if I may begin our portion of the sentencing hearing by touching on some of the report, the sentencing report that's been previously introduced into evidence. I believe this is Defendant's Exhibit 4, sir. That was prepared by Josie Van Dyke. She was here on Friday. She could not be here this afternoon. She did have to take her daughter to the hospital, but she was here all afternoon on Friday. She works with Sentencing Solutions Incorporated in Knightdale, North Carolina, and she has been doing this for about 15 years. This is the first time I've ever worked with her, but she's done this for about 15 years. I'm not sure if Your Honor is familiar with her work or not. I would like to just touch on some portions of her report, if I may. Then we'll be calling several character witnesses on Chandler's behalf. And then if I could end our presentation by going through statutorily based mitigating factors, and then perhaps a suggestion from our viewpoint on what just punishment is in this case, Your Honor. Your Honor, as you know from listening to the evidence, Chandler was 20 years old at the time of this offense. He's from Asheboro, North Carolina. He was an outstanding student, athlete, president of the student body his senior year. He was in the band, very active in student government, very active in his church, in community service through his church. He graduated 10th in his class out of 271. He has no criminal record whatsoever, Your Honor. President Brian Toff, who was the principal, at Asheboro High School, this is contained in Ms. Van Dyke's report on page 5. Here's what he had to say about Chandler. I have never met a student more active in his school and community. He goes on so far as to say Mr. Kania was the high school student that Mr. Toff, the principal, always wished he had been. That quote is taken from a character letter that had been provided to the DA's office many, many months ago, and I believe has been also handed up to the court earlier. and that's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 5, the entire stack of character letters served. After this offense, Your Honor, given Chandler's injuries, his parents, the report addresses this, they were concerned about his injuries, and they did feel like it was necessary for them to bond him out of jail, Your Honor, so he was not able to spend any significant time pre-trial because of his injuries, Your Honor. He was confined to a wheelchair for some period of time. He even had to have a separate surgery because one of the plates that was involved in his leg was not healing properly. Since his release, Your Honor, he has increased the amount of community service that he has always performed, specifically with multi-housing ministries where he tutors underprivileged children. I can tell this court in regards to remorse, and you see it many times on behalf of Chandler. I have personally seen it in all my dealings with him, in every meeting with him. I know my co-counsels would agree with that. You notice it in the doctor's note from his medical records at UNC. You noticed it at the interview with Trooper Collins. Trooper Collins testified to that on the stand. You notice it from Ms. Van Dyke, who had to personally interview, of course, and spend much time with Chandler. You notice it with Dr. Lilly, and I will talk on Dr. Lilly, who is Chandler's current counselor and psychiatrist, and also is reflected in Dr. Corvin's letter, which is again attached in the sentencing report prepared by Ms. Van Dyke. When you look at what I would call Chandler's resume, for lack of a better word, that's included in the report, Your Honor, it's simply amazing. I don't think I've ever represented someone this age who had done so much and had that much promise. He, at 20 years old, a true leader who obviously made the worst decision someone could make in this situation. Not trying to diminish anything, but I do want the court to know more about this young man, Your Honor. Mr. Neiman mentioned Bruce Murakami. He, of course, is mentioned in the report, and he is here today from Florida to tell the court his story and personal experience that he had and what led to his starting Safe Team Driver, where he works with defendants in cases like this to do more than just lock somebody up away for as long as they can be locked up, but to do something good out of a tragic, disastrous event. Your Honor, since the offense date, Chandler has been meeting with and seeing on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis Dr. Harold Lilly. His report is included in the sentencing memorandum. He's been randomly drug tested 9 times, each with negative results. I mentioned a moment ago, Dr. Lilly goes on to point out how remorseful Chandler has been. He diagnosed Chandler with PTSD following the accident, Your Honor. George Corvin, Mr. Neiman also mentioned, he is a forensic psychiatrist. He is very well known in the area. He is very well respected in the area. He did a psychiatric evaluation, and again, that's in the report that I handed up to the court many days ago. Here's what he says about Chandler as far as the evaluation goes. He has one excellent CV. I'm happy to hand that up to the court, by the way. He described Chandler as remarkably high functioning, a psychologically healthy young man. There was nothing about his psychiatric makeup that indicated any type of a personality disorder or anything that would explain this type of willing behavior, Your Honor. He also described Chandler and has the opinion that he has a very low risk of recidivism or engaging in future criminal conduct, and that would make sense given the fact that he doesn't have a prior criminal record whatsoever, sir. Your Honor, at this time, we would like to call several witnesses, if that's okay with the court.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. You guys are all.
Left hand on the Bible, raise your right. Do solemnly swear that the testimony about to give this court to be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
State your name, please.
Jenny Martin.
And what do you do, Ms. Martin?
I'm the associate pastor for missions at First Baptist Church in Asheboro. I've been there about 11 years.
And in that capacity, have you met Chandler Kania?
Yes.
How long ago did you meet him?
I probably met him about 11 years ago or around then when I came on staff there at the church. Knew of his family. Did not have close contact with his family, but knew of them. We participated in youth events and things like that. I'm a foster parent and have students in the youth group that are about his age.
Yes, ma'am. So that we can use the court's time wisely, I want to ask you a few questions about Chandler since the accident. So have you spent time near or with Chandler since the accident occurred?
Yes.
And how did this come to pass?
I think when this tragedy happened, we were all shook up wanting to know what can we do for the family to minister to them. And in conversation with his mother, we were talking about how do you keep your sanity in the middle of all of this. And one thing is to do something positive. And so we decided that it would be a great idea for them to come and volunteer and to give back. We rent apartments in low-income neighborhoods. We have 2 of them as a church family. We have 2 groups that we tutor and share the gospel with on Mondays, 1 group on Tuesdays. And Stephanie and Chandler have not missed 1 week with us in the past year. And I've been able to observe him and get to know him a whole lot better on a deeper level through our tutoring program.
How old are these children?
They range from kindergarten through high school.
And how many days of the week is this conducted?
On Mondays and Tuesdays, I'm missing the program right now. We have a group that meets at 2:30 that are kindergarten through 3rd grade in the Coleridge Road apartments. And then at 4 o'clock, we have older students who come in, mostly 4th grade through 8th grade. Tuesday nights, it's all the way through high school. It's kindergarten through high school, so they're all school-age children.
Did Chandler volunteer for this program?
Yes,
Was it soon after the accident?
yes.
So how long has he conducted or helped you conduct this program? How many months, approximately?
For about the entire school year last year while we were open, and then he began this fall until the trial began.
And how many hours on Monday and how many hours on Tuesday would he spend with you?
Mondays are probably around 3 hours. Tuesday could be 2.5 hours.
And what kinds of activities are performed by Chandler at these events?
We have a prayer card for each child that we keep track of what we pray with them about throughout the school year, where they can look back at what they've prayed about. So each individual volunteer prays with children one-on-one before they leave. We also sit down with the children, sometimes one-on-one, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, to do homework. We try to group them into similar grades, especially if students have the same teacher. They may have the same homework. So Chandler, our boys love him and like him better than we older ladies, as you can imagine, being a young man. And so he, at any given time, sometimes he'd even have 4 students at a time that maybe had the same math homework or something, and he could do some of the math that some of us older folks that weren't trained in the way the school system is training now. So he was a gift to us in the past year.
And did he relate well to these children?
Oh, yes.
They liked him?
Yes. Want to know where he is.
And what was his attitude? What kind of attitude did he bring to this work?
Very positive. He as a group of volunteers and adults, he's in the room with mostly some retired ladies and myself, and, he's building relationships with us. And as the children come in, the boys come right to him and sit down. And, I've heard Chandler encourage students to stay in school, to make good decisions. This is a situation where we're not just doing homework, where we're talking about life and encouraging one another in situations. I've overheard conversations that he's had with some boys and him trying to point them in the right direction and be a positive influence.
And has it been your feeling that this is genuine, that he is genuinely interested in the kids?
Yes.
Have you had any opportunity to get a sense about his remorse?
I have not spent one-on-one time with Chandler. When we come into multi-housing ministry, we have to turn it on. There's not much opportunity for, the children are coming in and they are our focus. And, so I've not been in an environment where I've asked that question. I felt like my job as a pastor for he and his family in this situation has been more to provide a positive outlet for them to volunteer and to focus on something positive. I think his therapist is probably a better litmus test for that. I've not asked him questions. I've not pried into that area of their lives. And there's not been a situation where we've been alone really to have that discussion. So I don't feel confident that I can speak about that. It's not an appropriate topic of discussion around our children.
Would you say that this has been a successful effort by Chandler?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's
Very
all my
much.
questions.
No, you're
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your Honor, we would call Kemper Fitch, please. And Your Honor, we'll move these quickly. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Right up.
Left hand on the Bible, raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give this court to be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Spell it.
State your name, please.
Kemper Fitch, Kemper Fitch.
And is it Mr. Fitch?
Yes, sir.
Where do you live, sir?
Asheboro, North Carolina.
And what do you do?
I'm retired.
What did you do with your time?
I was the principal at Asheboro High School,
When did you retire?
2012.
So did you have an opportunity to see Chandler Kania during the years that you were principal?
Yes, sir, I did. I believe he entered the freshman class in 2009 and was a junior the end of the year that I retired.
So he would have been a teenager in those years?
Yes, sir.
What was he like as a school kid?
He was a model student. I don't think I would be wrong in saying that he was one of the leaders in the school. He was a leader in the Student Government Association. Student government, depending on what school you're at, I've been in a number of them. I've seen a lot of different organizations. The one at Asheboro High School is fairly unique in that it is, when young men or women are elected to office there, it's not just hold that title and get their name in the yearbook, I guess. It is an office of service. And Chandler exemplified that during his time there.
Did you feel that he was a sincere participant in those programs?
Oh, there's no question about it. One in particular that comes to my mind, each year the student government had a blood drive. And it was an all-day event. One of the biggest things they did in the school, the reason as a principal I remember it because it interrupted the school day all day. But Chandler was, I believe his junior year, was in charge of that, setting it up, operating it, working with the Red Cross to get everything done, making sure that everything the school day interruptions were minimized as much as they could be. Now, I don't know how many pints of blood that they did annually, but I know that it was always very successful. We had a number of teachers and students and outside community people that came in to participate in that. So from Chandler's perspective, he, in leading that, organizing it, working with all of the Red Cross people, working with all of the students that were volunteers, it affected a lot of people. Anytime the Red Cross comes and they are successful, that blood goes to save lives. So I looked in that respect that Chandler was a real leader in working at something that helped other people.
Did you feel that Chandler had a promising future?
Oh, there's no question about it.
How would you rank him in terms of all the students that you had worked with over the years? Would you rank him high among those?
I would. Mm-hmm.
What, just one last question, what are the qualities in him that you admired the most?
To hold that office in the school and to watch him operate in the school, on the athletic field, in the band room, with the band on the field, administering the Student Government Association duties, he was always responsible. He was always accountable. He was always on time. He was a person of integrity. And I think that would adequately describe Chandler during my time at Asheboro High School.
In this proceeding we've been in, I'm sure you've learned that Chandler smoked pot and drank at Carolina.
Yes, sir.
This disappoints you, I'm sure.
It shocked me.
Does it diminish your view any in your saying that he had a fine future and was a great boy?
Well, Mr. Smith, I'm 66 years old, and I've been around the block a time or two. I know I've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. We all wish there's things that we could go back and erase in our lives. Certainly, this is a tragic, a horrible incident. It's a horrible thing that has happened, and certainly there are things that Chandler will be responsible for, paying for that. However, he has great promise. He is a bright young man. I believe in talking with him. My wife and I met with him and his family after the accident, and I believe that he has shown remorse. I believe that he's repentant about what has happened, and that when all is said and done, that he'll contribute somewhere. I don't know where that'll be, but that's just the kind of person that he is.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
No, Your Honor.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, the defendant calls Dr. Todd Williams. Thank you, Dr. Williams.
Left hand on the Bible, raise your right.
That's right, right up to,
I'll see it.
there it is.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give this court to be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Would you state your name, please?
Dr. James Todd Williams, but I'll go by my middle name, Todd.
And Dr. Williams, where do you live?
Asheboro.
And what kind of work do you do?
I'm a dermatologist, physician, but specializing in dermatology.
How long have you been in Asheville?
20 years.
Do you know the Kania family?
Extremely well.
And do you know Chandler?
Extremely well.
How long have you known Chandler?
I've known Chandler since he was 6, so that would be more than 15 years.
So you've had an opportunity to see him grow up.
I have.
What are the things you recall about him as a young boy?
He was full of energy. He was extremely fun. We had a lot of activities involving sports and also youth theater. and I'm friends with his parents as well, so there's a lot of overlap with that. He was always the kind of kid that was very charismatic. Kids enjoyed him, had a lot of friends, a lot of diverse friends. He had a lot of friends from different arenas because he was involved in a lot of things, even as a young person. And then, of course, he got older, it just continued to expand.
He is a part of a family that is both very public-spirited, as I understand, his father and mother.
Very community-oriented. His parents give as much to the Asheboro community as any family that I'm aware of, in all sorts of things. Theater, sports, school, band. They volunteer. They're very involved in First Baptist Church and those ministries. And he has another brother as well, Cameron. And they're very well involved and do a variety of things, very, very unselfishly. It's a very unselfish family.
And has Chandler been active in the church?
Oh, yes. He was active in the church and in ministry in general. He was involved in First Baptist ministry and also in Young Life ministry and other activities of that nature. He's a spiritually minded young man.
What are the characteristics of his life as he became older and a teenager? What things did you observe about him during those years?
He matured quite a bit, as you hope all teenagers will. He was highly involved at the school and in a lot of different things. I don't want to really rehash those things, so many things. He was, one of the things that I enjoyed about him is he had a really great sense of humor. He was a leader in a good way. One time in the band, I remember very specifically, he was notorious for doing things in a band presentation that were very endearing to his colleagues, very funny things, very spontaneous things. We all enjoyed him a great deal because he was a kid that just drew others to himself, and so I watched him mature. He was a great athlete as well, great soccer player. My kids played soccer with him, and he's an outstanding soccer player, but a very good sportsman. I mean, never had any trouble on the field, played really hard and played really well, but I never saw him cause a bit of problems on the field of any kind, which would be in keeping with the testimony you've heard.
Did you believe him to be, in those years when you knew him well, a boy with great promise?
Oh, he has exceptional promise. I mean, he's one of the brightest kids that's ever come through our community. He's very unselfish. He's very service-oriented. I would place that, as in regards to his spiritual background and his spiritual interests. But he just has a great unselfishness. And those sorts of people, when they're talented, like Chandler is, they do great things, at least in terms of service. As they get older, that's just... the trajectory would definitely go in that direction.
Of course, you've learned through these proceedings that he smoked marijuana and that he used alcohol. Those are not things that he grew up knowing that he should do, are they?
No, I never was, to my knowledge, and I knew Chandler well, that was never part of his life, through high school. I've heard the testimony sufficiently, and of course I know him and have been with the family many times anyway, but no, there was never any history that I had any recollection of anything related to substances, and also just general behavior. He's just one of those kids that was just real compliant and just had a great track record for great behavior.
The fact that he did those things, and there's no doubt he did, does that diminish your view that he was and is a person of great promise?
It doesn't diminish it at all. He is a person of great promise.
Do you see him as a person who can handle the punishment, whatever it is the court gives him, and still someday find a useful way to live?
I would expect it. It would be my expectation. Yeah, he will. He definitely will. And I've been with him enough, and I've seen a lot of maturity in him. I've seen his remorse considerably. I mean, he told me himself, he said, Todd, I'll just be honest. I'm going to move ahead, but I just don't think I can ever forgive myself. I mean, he's been very remorseful, and the first call that I received on when the event occurred was from Michael, and the first thing he said was, just pray for the families involved. They're the ones that are hurting. Just pray for them. It's just stereotypical of their family. That's what they're like.
That's all the questions I have.
Briefly.
He's got a question.
Wait, just one moment, Dr. Williams.
Sir, you know the defendant's parents well?
I do.
Okay. Were you ever present when they would consume alcohol with their sons while they were underage?
I've never seen the Kanias drink alcohol. I mean, I've never been with them when they were drinking alcohol, so I can say no, I have not, because I just haven't been with them when there was alcohol.
So
in the
if
home.
they drank alcohol, they concealed that fact from you?
Yes, I never had any idea of any drinking in their family, to my knowledge.
Okay. You said that you thought that the defendant had a lot of promise, not arguing with you on that. Wouldn't it be, if he were to receive the maximum amount he can get right now, if he were to get out when he's, say, 38 years old, he'd have a lot of life left to live to show that promise, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think whatever life he has left, he'll show great promise, whatever age. I do anticipate that. I would.
Okay. Thank you.
No further questions. Thank you, Dr. Williams.
Defense calls Josiah Williams.
Left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony about to give this court to be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good afternoon, sir. Could you please tell us your name?
I'm Josiah Williams.
Please spell your name for the court for me.
Josiah Josiah Williams.
Thank you. And where are you from?
Spiro, North Carolina. Right now I'm living in Raleigh, though I'm a student I'm 22.
Were you know Chandler Kania?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you known him?
I'd say I've known Chandler for probably at least 10 years, really just about as long as I can remember, but I've known him.
So in what ways?
Well, we were in a lot of classes together, and we also, we were both in band, and also we would hang out and stuff. I mean, I was fairly close with Chandler.
What are the prominent features of Chandler's personality, would you say?
He always was very selfless. I recall, I had known Chandler for a long time, as I said, but as a freshman, I remember just thinking about how incredible, what incredible ability he had at including just all sorts of different type of people. He's very kind. He has a lot of energy, and really he was encouraging, and he just drew to himself people from a lot of different backgrounds, I guess.
Was he well liked by his peers?
Very well liked by everyone.
Was he a leader among his peers?
I would say he was definitely a leader and good boy.
And have you and Chandler remained close since you both went to different schools?
We've stayed in contact. We're not super close, but I mean, I've stayed in touch with Chandler and talked to him from time to time.
Have you interacted with him much since these tragic events?
I've spoken with him a few times, yes.
Do you believe Chandler has the capacity to return to the community one day and have a useful life?
He absolutely will.
No further questions.
Briefly. Mr. Williams, is it safe to say that in the school year leading up to this event, meaning the 2014 to 2015 school year, you had almost no contact with the defendant, right?
Not a whole lot, no.
No.
But we in high school we had just a pretty close community of friends, and so I don't recall if I spoke to Chandler one-on-one in that time, but we've kind of stayed in touch just by kind of keeping like with the same friend group, I guess. But I don't recall speaking one-on-one with him frequently in that time.
Or ever receiving a call from him?
No, sir.
Or ever making a call to him?
No, sir, I don't really call people often.
Sure, good point. Never sent or received a text either, though, did you, in that
Text
entire year?
Many people either,
But he does, doesn't he?
as far as I'm aware, yes, sir.
Okay. Nothing further.
No, thanks.
Mr. Williams, is that you?
Yes, sir.
After 2 hours of reading letters, you had the best one.
Thank you.
Brother Emerson,
Yes, Your Honor. The text off, Ms. Quinn.
Left hand on the Bible, raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you got to give this court to be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I'll take a break after this witness, we gotta be tired.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Gwen Hammer. It's Gwenhammer.
Thank you, Ms. Hammer. Where do you live, ma'am?
I live in Ashboro.
And what do you do in Asheboro for work?
I'm an instructional assistant at Guy B. Teachy Elementary School.
What's the name of that school?
Guy B. Teachy.
And do you know Chandler Kania?
I do know Chandler.
How long have you known Chandler?
I've known Chandler well since 2009. He and his family joined our church, and he became a member of our student ministry. I chaperoned mission trips with him. We went to places as Bryson City, North Carolina, and Orlando, Florida. On those trips, Chandler was always polite to all the adults that were there, as well as his peers, as well as people that we were in contact with. He was very positive. He adhered to our curfews, our time to get up, our time to do things. He was there. He was willing to go. He did whatever we asked him to do. He was always very willing. He enjoyed being with us. As part of our ministry back at home, we did Habitat for Humanity. We worked with Christians United Outreach, where we would go and help with food pantry or help on housing. He was responsible. He wasn't goofing off and demolishing things. He was responsible. He enjoyed what he was doing. He was a leader. As well, we took our student ministry into the Kania homes many nights on Sunday evenings to have home fellowship, where we played together, they ate together, and they worshiped together. As well, he came to my house for those same home fellowships, and he was always polite at my house. It was just a joy to be around, and loved serving the Lord and serving others. Was where his smile came into play, that he enjoyed what he was doing when he was serving other people.
Thank you, ma'am. In what ways have you interacted with Chandler since these tragic events?
Well, as I stated, I'm an instructional assistant at Guy B. Teachy, which is where Chandler went to elementary school. And I remembered about last January that Chandler used to walk those halls while he was in high school. He entered there and came to work his service projects and tutored children in the mornings before he went to school. He would be there helping children who needed somebody to listen to them read or help with their homework. So as we assessed our children last February, we found that we had a small handful of kids that were struggling, that they got no help at home, and that they needed an extra help, that we didn't have the hands to put on 22 children and get them to grade level before June. So I thought, Chandler, he could come and he can help this. He came 2 to 3 days a week from about 8:15 to 10 o'clock. He worked in our kindergarten classroom. We put him over to the side where he would work one-on-one with the children. He helped them flash cards with sight words to give them the boost of confidence that they needed to increase their reading and writing ability so that they could go on at first grade and be successful and feel good about themselves. He would also help them understand math concepts that we just didn't have time, or they didn't get it the first time, but he could take them one-on-one, such as comparing and contrasting 3D and 2D shapes for a 5 and a 6-year-old, or place value for a 5 and a 6-year-old that he could break it down on a level that and help them more one-on-one. When we started out, we had a little boy who wanted so badly to make 100 on his spelling test, and he just couldn't do it because he had no help at home. After about the first week of Chandler being there, helping him, he made that 100, and he was elated. And as Chandler continued to work with him, that only increased in his vocabulary. And we have now sent him to first grade on grade level, successful with that. We had just a few children that we wanted him to work with that we thought were at-risk children. However, the other children were jealous of that, and they would often go up to him and say, "Would you please tell Ms. Hammer that it's my time to work with you. I want to work with Chandler." So we had to increase his time a little bit and give him some time with our other children as well, because he had that charisma and the interaction and just a wonderful rapport with all the children. This year, we didn't have the chance to get him into our kindergarten classroom, but there was a place that he could plug in for about the last 4 weeks as school started with our media specialist. He came in and worked with her because she's a one-man team. He reorganized our literacy closet. He inventoried books. He leveled books. And then as she began to have classes come in, he helped children choose books that they could take home and read, or he checked out books, or he just gave her the helping hand that she does not have on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, ma'am. So I take it it's safe to say these children really like Chandler.
Yes, sir, they did.
Did the kids come together and create something to thank Chandler for his efforts?
Yes, sir, they did. We, in our classroom, we have a policy that we try to teach the kids the manners as well. And when somebody does something for you, you write a thank you note or you say thank you in some way. And so we created a book during our writing time. We kept it instructional and beneficial to the children, and gave them a writing assignment to write to Chandler a note of what they liked best about him or how they helped him. And so they they illustrated and wrote a book, and we presented it to him before the end of the school year.
Thank you. Your Honor, I've marked as Defendant's Exhibit 6 this book of compilation of notes, if I may show it to Mr. Neiman. May I approach the witness?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ma'am, have a look at this. Is this the book you were just describing?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Your Honor, this time I move to introduce Defendant's Exhibit 6 into evidence for this sentencing hearing.
That's fine.
May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Hammer, do you believe that Chandler Kania has the capacity to return to the community and build a useful life?
I certainly do. I believe that his heart is in service and helping others, and that is what he does, and that he will always continue to do that in order to fulfill his passion and his joy that he has for other people.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Carl.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. We're in recess 3:15. You're welcome. Well, you need to speak up when you need something. Well, don't figure. The other thing is, sometimes I can go real fast, and I don't realize I'm going fast. Say, oh, well, I haven't said much. Sure.
Help yourself. Take some with you. You can keep it for the trick or treat. Well, yeah, that could be part of it. You have a lot of trick or treating? No, my two nieces, children. Yeah, out where I live, they don't come out there.